So I was telling this story. We were coming from Dallas. I think we were doing a concert. That's what I think that it was. But either way, I had a van filled with people. Brian had to fly out. We're Kingdom Music. Brian had to fly out, and so it was some of the students, myself, and Monty. We were coming back from Dallas back to Abilene, and so I have this van, like a 16-passenger van, and it belongs to the ministry, so it's not brand new, okay? Let's just say that. It's God's property. Don't make fun of it, okay? She's a beauty. So I'm driving down, and we're past about halfway, and there's this little strip. I don't know exactly where it is. I can't remember, but there's maybe about 20 or 25 minutes where there's not a gas station. It's just curvy little highway, and so you better be prepared if you don't have gas. And so I'm driving, and I have the pedal down, and the speedometer starts to go down. And I'm like, what in the world's wrong with the gas pedal here? And so I'm trying to get it to start while I'm driving, and I finally get it to start again. And it does the same exact thing again, except the next time it dies and it doesn't come back on. And so I'm thinking to myself, what's wrong with this? The fuel pump is out. There's a gas leak. There's something. I don't know what's wrong with it. And so I pull over on the side of the highway, and I call Mike Peters, right? When something goes wrong, you call Mike Peters, right? If y'all don't know that, you'll know that. SOS, right? And so he puts on the phone one of our students who's a mechanic, and he starts troubleshooting. And I tell him it's probably the fuel pump or gas leak or something. And he ran through these things, and he goes, "You're out of gas." And I'm like, no, I'm not out of gas. I don't run out of gas. I could put gas in the vehicle. That's not hard to do. And he was like, "Sounds like you're out of gas." And I'm like, "You're on the verge of disobedience right now. Come fix this van," right? So the cool thing is that we had a group of guys that were already going out of town, and so they were on 20 coming the opposite direction. And so about 35, 45 minutes, here they come. And so he walks up into the van, and he starts messing with the ignition, and he starts messing with stuff, acting like he's doing what I thought was wrong with it. And he walked away, and he goes, "Hey, y'all bring the gas can." And I'm like, you little. And he comes and he brings the gas, and so they put 2.5 gallons of gas or whatever in the van, and he goes, "Start it," and he goes, "Run, run, 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 run." And I was like, bam, I told you it wasn't the gas. And he goes, "Hey, let's move the van. It's on the side of the highway," and it was tilted like this. He goes, "Put it in neutral." And so we put it in neutral, and we put it up on the side, little shoulder lane where it flattens out. He goes, "Start it again." And it starts right up. He goes, "You're out of gas." I'm like, you are going to be on discipline, don't you? Listen, Pastor, you're going to go to the first gas station, and you're going to fill up the van with gas. And I'm like, I know what to do, okay? I know what to do. We don't run out of gas. And I tell this story because in this message, I was thinking it's one thing to run out of gas when you're expecting to run out of gas, right? How many of y'all have ever ran out of gas before? Be honest. Come on, be honest. I'm not going to call on you. Yeah, right? So, my contact. So anyways, back to it. I had a little contact failure right there. So we run out of gas. Now, it's one thing to run out of gas when you're expecting it, right? What are all the tricks that you do? Roll down the windows, put it in neutral, pray to God with all that's inside of you. "Father, if you would just get me to the gas station," and then you don't have any money, so I don't know what you're going to do anyways. Yeah, so it's one thing to run out of gas because you can already make a phone call like, "Man, I'm in the hood. Don't leave me here in the hood. Come get me out of here. Come get me." You can call for help. So it's one thing to run out of gas when you're expecting it. But it's another thing to get sideswiped and run out of gas when everybody in the car had money for gas. And I just left like 100 gas stations. I would have stopped in Ranger at the Loves and bought a Subway sandwich and filled up with gas. It wasn't the issue. And that's what hurts the most is when you don't expect it. When you don't see it coming. And what I think it's the same thing in life, is it not? It's the hits in life that you don't see coming that hurt the most. Would y'all agree? See, it's one thing to run out of gas whenever you think and you know it's just a matter of time before I run out of gas versus you're driving and you got your kids and you got everybody that's depending on you to get from point A to point B and you can't make it because out of nowhere you run out of gas. And it's the same thing I would say in life. It's one thing whenever you're going to work and you lose your job and over the course of the last 6 months, you've been having difficulties with your boss and coworkers and the atmosphere is changing and you know that it's coming to an end and you go to work and they tell you that you no longer have a job. You were kind of expecting it. It's a little bit different in that scenario than whenever you just got the new house and you got a new car because of your new job and you're so excited and you get to work and they come to you and they tell you that your whole department was downsized, AKA fired. You were let go. See, it's one thing to expect it to come. It's another thing whenever life hits you and you weren't looking. Because can you imagine the ride home? Like, I just got this house. I just got this car, I just got this, and now your mind is running wild. You're trying to figure out how are you going to pay all these bills. It's whenever life hits and you didn't see it coming is whenever it hurts and whenever it knocks you down, and that's the hardest part to get back up. It's one thing to lose your house over the course of an entire year. You were having a tough time paying your mortgage, and the bill collectors were calling, and the mortgage company was calling. Over the course of a year, you come home, and there's a foreclosure notice posted on your door, and your door is chained up. It's one thing to lose your house whenever you were expecting it. It's another thing to get a phone call that your house has burned to the ground. Take your breath away, thinking in your mind that if I could just get one moment to get into my house, if I just had one moment to get in there, I would go get my kids' belongings, my little baby pictures. I would go get your mother's stuff that she left you. You would go like, I don't care. I would fight my way through those flames if I could in the most vulnerable place. It was all ripped from you, and you could do nothing about it. It's when life hits and you didn't see it coming that it hurts the worst. It's one thing when the doctor tells you that your family member has a sickness, and they only have a few years to live, and then a year to live, and then a few months, and the whole family huddles around, and they come around, and your loved one is in hospice, and they know that it's coming to the end, and they're led to the Lord, and even though that it's the most difficult season of your life, this overwhelming peace comes on you, that you know that everything is going to be okay, and that you trust Jesus. It's one thing to know that the end is coming, and then the doctor walks in and says that if you want to see your loved one, right now is the time to come in. They're about to take their last breath, and so you come in and you embrace as one with your family, and y'all go through this difficult transition in the season of knowing that you're not going to have a loved one. It's another thing to get a phone call or a doorbell at 3 in the morning, and there's 2 police officers at your front door saying that your loved one was in a horrific car wreck, and they're the only one who passed away. It's whenever life hits and you weren't expecting it that it hurts the most, and it's the hardest to get back up. And just like whenever I was in that van and we ran out of gas, I was out of gas. I don't want to guess, do I have enough fuel in me? Do I have enough fuel in me to get myself back up when life hits? Because how many people know that life is going to hit? How many people can say right now, life has hit me? Do I have some people that can say right now that life has hit me? But I'm going to tell you, and I want to teach you and show you how God's going to show you how to hit back, how you can get back up and hit back. But the thing is that you can't guess any longer if you're on empty or not. You got to know that you're filled up. I can't guess, do I have enough in me to get back to another Sunday? Am I going to last to another Wednesday? Like, I can't wait till my fellowship night. I got to make sure that I'm good on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday morning, Thursday night, Friday, every single day. And so over the next few weeks, I want to talk to you on a series entitled Empty. And the thing is I want to teach you how to be the opposite, filled. How to be filled with God. And there's a story in the Bible, John chapter 4, verses 4 through 18. Now I'm going to read a little bit of scriptures, and then I'm going to teach a little bit. Is that okay? And then I'm going to preach a little bit after that, if that's fine with you guys. So, in verse 4, and the word of the Lord reads, Amen. I wanted y'all to see that. That's the men's home right there. It says, and he had to pass through Samaria. And we stop and we teach. So the cool thing about this is that it says he had to pass through Samaria. I want to bring a little, not just historical context, but geographical context. Because Jesus is having issues with the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the religious leaders of the time. And so he wants to depart where he is and go back to Galilee. The problem is Galilee is right through Samaria. And so the most common route for Jews to go is to go around. It's to go around Samaria to get to Galilee. The reason is they don't want to go through Samaria, because the Samaritans are what they would consider their half-breed cousins, a lower-class citizen. Matter of fact, we don't even want to be around them. We don't even want the dust from their town on our shoes. And we will avoid them at all costs. See, the Samaritans they fell victim to the Assyrian kingdom. They came in and when they conquered the northern kingdom and they conquered a bunch of other places, they would gather groups of these Jews and they would displace them and put them and resettle them into different areas. And so now these Jewish people were intermingling with other races and other religions. And so now that pure Jewish, the roots have been intertwined now. And so now that they're around, the Samaritans are back around Jews, we don't want anything to do with you. Y'all got captured, not us. But how many people know that Jesus is not like the religious leaders? This is the amazing part. It says in verse 5, so he came to the town of Samaria called Sychar, near the field that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there. So Jesus, wearied as he was from his journey, was sitting beside the well. It was about the 6th hour. Think about this. Why in the world did it make reference on the time unless it's important? It says it was about the 6th hour. In our terms, that would be high noon. And so now you understand. Think about this. The ones who needed it the most, the ones who were slaves, they were resettled and they were brought back in, these half-breed, lower-class citizens, as they would say. The ones who needed them the most, they would go around at all costs to get around them, so they wouldn't even have to make contact with these people. Does that not sound like what religion is today? It gets away from the ones who need it the most. You better change before you come to church. You better get your life together before you come to church, because we will not associate with you until you do that. But how many people know that Jesus will break every rule, every tradition? He will walk right up into your mess. He walks right up into your mess. And so he says he went through Samaria, not because he had to, but because he chose to. He wanted to walk through where nobody else would go. He said, I would, and I'll go. And then at noon, a place where nobody would be is the well at noon. It's too hot. He's there. Verse 7, a woman from Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, give me a drink. For his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, how is it that you, a Jew, race, ask me, a woman, gender, of Samaria? For Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. Isn't it amazing? 2,000 years ago, we have gender and race issues. Guess what we still have today? But once again, Jesus will break every rule to get to the lost. And he tells you, he teaches, he doesn't fight. He doesn't get up there and proclaim and make a big deal about it. Because I think, honestly, sometimes people make a bigger deal than what it is, and it causes more division. You know, just glorifying the problem doesn't bring you a solution. Jesus is the solution. If all love is there, then we could bring this all in together. And so in verse 10, it says, Jesus answered her, girl, if you knew the gift of... No, he didn't say that. I thought it did. Okay, the Rise International version. Girl, if you knew who I was, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. The woman said to him, sir, you have nothing to draw with. You don't have a bucket. How are you going to get water, Jesus? You have no bucket. And it says, and the well is deep. But where do you get this living water? In every bottle of Topo Chico. That's what he says. It's in the Bible. I saw it. Let's move on to verse 12. It says, are you greater than our father Jacob? He's probably like, yeah, duh. He gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did his sons and his livestock. Jesus said to her, everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again. And just like you're thirsty. But whoever drinks of this water that I will give him, he will never be thirsty again. The water that I give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life. This woman said, sir, give me this water so that I won't be thirsty or have to come to draw water anymore. She recognizes that Jesus doesn't have a bucket because he doesn't need a bucket. He is the well. Verse 16, it says, Jesus said to her, go call your husband. Come here. The woman answered him, I have no husband. Jesus said to her, you right, sure right. You are right in saying, I have no husband, for you have had 5 husbands, and the one you have now is not your husband. What you have said is true. So now we're about to find out that this lady's apparent need and what she's going through right now, and the reason why she's going to get filled up at noon, there's a deeper issue. And it doesn't matter how many times she fills up her bucket, she is going to remain empty. The title of week 1 is Empty Buckets. Empty buckets. So I want to bring you back to my original story whenever we ran out of gas, to defend myself and to let everybody know that I didn't just run out of gas. The gas gauge was messed up, okay? And they forgot to tell me. They lied to me and they set me up for failure. That's the way I took it. That's the way I took it, right? They set me up for failure. They should have told me. They should have. So that's the reason why we ran out of gas. It's because I didn't even know that we were running out of gas. I thought that the quarter tank was just lasting for like 2 hours. I was like, God is with us real big time right now. I was like, since we left Dallas, it hasn't even moved. I'm like, shout out, God. We love you, God. Shout out to God. Yeah. So that's what happened, is that the gas gauge was messed up. So I had no clue that we were out of gas, and what a horrible feeling to have so many people under your care and merchandise. And I'm trying to get everybody home, and now we're on the side of the road and we're out of gas. But they come and they give me a tank of gas. I go fill up the gas tank in the van. But even though I fill up the gas, it fixes the apparent need right now. But what's going to happen sooner or later again? Probably going to run out of gas again and blame the other people for not reminding me. So it's probably going to happen again. And I would say there's going to be issues in your life that you can fix the apparent need, but it's going to happen again. See, I couldn't do anything about it. The gas gauge was messed up, but until you go through and the guys are asking, well, is it this, is it that? They start sifting through the different things that it could possibly be so we could first identify the source. What you have to do in any problem is identify the source, because how can you fix it if you don't know what's wrong? How can you fix it if you don't know what's wrong? Identify the source of your pain. Identify the source of your anxiety. Identify the source of your addiction, of your depression, of whatever it is, to identify the source. And this is exactly what Jesus does, because on the apparent outside surface, down from the top, looking down, you see this young lady. She's there, however old she is. She's there at the well. And then you wouldn't make anything of it, but the Bible strategically, intentionally puts it was the 6th hour to let you know she's there at noon. Nobody goes to put water in buckets at noon. It is too hot. You're either going to go early in the morning before the sun comes up, or you're going to go late at night whenever the sun goes down. But nobody goes at noon, and that's why she's there. Because Jesus doesn't stop at the outside, from the top, the surface, the apparent. He digs a little bit deeper. In very Jesus fashion way, he says, hey, go call your husband. She's like, I don't have one. She's like, you're right. You've had 5. And the one you're with right now, it's not your husband. But I want to tell you something. What's not going to happen here? We're not coming swinging axes on anybody. Because that sin would be no different than pride, than lust, than greed, than any other thing. And so we never said, can everybody please get your life together, then come to Rise? No, you came to Rise, you came to God so he could sort through your symptoms and get to the source to find out what is really going on in your life. And so he doesn't just leave it there, because you can't correct what you're not willing to confront. But he does it in the most loving way. He doesn't come swinging an axe out here. He doesn't come and get on Facebook Live and tell everybody what you're doing wrong and how his ministry is righteous and she's not and all these different things. Do you know what he does? He goes out of his way to get to her and meets her at the well. He meets her at her place of disappointment. He meets her at her place of grief, at her place where she feels abandoned, pushed out from everybody, because Jewish customs at the time would allow for 3 marriages. She was past that lenient law. At 5, pretty much gave up on marriage. Like, you know what? I'll just have a boyfriend now. Why even try this all over again? And Jesus doesn't come swinging an axe at her, but what he tells her is about this gift of God that can change all your situations. He doesn't leave it alone. He's going to confront the situation, but he doesn't come swinging an axe on her with condemnation, but he tells her that there is hope and that there can be a change in your life. I want you to think about this. A woman, men didn't even talk to women. Jewish men didn't even talk to women. This is the most messed up situation for any Jewish guy. He's going through Samaria, and he runs into a woman. Jewish men never talk to women in public, not even their own wives, let alone a Samaritan. And she's a Samaritan. She's like, who are you talking to me, a Samaritan? I'm a woman. And you care enough to talk about me. For the first time, she's probably being talked to like a human being. For the first time, he's down on her level and just saying, you're just like everybody else. There's a little turn where you took and it's off, and I can help you get back to where you need to be. For the first time, he brings her in. She probably feels that love, and her mind is probably blown. And this is the way that Jesus approaches this situation, so she can correct and confront some things in her life, but he does it in a very Jesus fashion way. Because you have to sort through the symptoms to find out what's wrong. Just like the reason why we go to the doctor, it's because we don't know what's wrong. We don't know how to fix it. You go to the doctor. Don't you hate being sick and you don't know why? You take a ibuprofen, the headache doesn't go away. You take Theraflu, it doesn't go away. The feeling of being sick and you don't know what it is. And what happens whenever you go to the doctor? The first thing that they do, or one of the first things they do, check your blood pressure, your heart, your breathing, your mouth, your eyes. They start narrowing the focus onto what it could be. They start sifting through the symptoms to find the source, to find out what it is. Because there's nothing worse to having something wrong and you don't even know what it is. And the enemy will do the same exact thing in your life. How can you win a battle that you don't even know you're fighting? How can you win a battle when you don't even know there's being a war waged against you? And what I say is this: so many times in the men's home, through addiction and through alcoholism, and so many people that we have helped over the last 8 years, what I have found out, the reason why nobody wins, or so few people win the battle of addiction, is because they're fighting the battle of addiction. And that's not the battle that you need to be fighting. That's not the battle. That is the reason why she showed up at noon. That's the reason why you have a bottle in your hand. That's why you have a pill in your hand. You have a needle in your arm. But that's not the source of the problem. You can try to mow the grass to get rid of the weeds. Does it look like the weeds are gone? But what happens when the grass grows back? The weed comes back. The weed comes back. You thought you were good for a little bit. The weed came back quicker than I thought. It just sprouted right up in my life. But you have to identify the source. And what I tell the guys is this: the reason why You lost your battle to addiction for so long is because you were up here fighting this battle of addiction, and there was a secret war being waged against you since you were a little kid, and you had no clue about it. You had no clue that whenever you were 6 years old, something happened to you, some trauma, some feeling rejected, abandoned, and something happened just like this bucket. It had a hole in it, and you keep trying to fill yourself up with something, but every single day, you keep getting depleted. Every single day, you try to come to get more, but you stay empty all the time. It's because you're fighting a battle that's not even supposed to fight. That's just the outside. Get to the source. Identify the source, and you can find out what's happening and quit fighting these invisible wars that are going on, especially in your mind. We call it the imaginary adversary. How many of y'all are y'all's own worst enemy at times? The enemy's like, wait a minute, I'm going to back off of that one. You're going to destroy yourself before I even get a chance. I'm going to let you do it. Sometimes the enemy's like, you got this one all by yourself. I'm afraid to come around you. I might get possessed by you. I'm playing, guys. But some of the biggest battles that we face are in our mind, are they not? And it's in the mind where your past lives. Because are you still back in the early 2000s? Are you back 3 years ago? Are you living 3 years ago? No, but you are. Because you haven't moved from here to there. And so the second thing that I want to tell you is getting past the past. Is getting past the past. To go forward, to go past the past so you don't become a prisoner of the past. If there's anything that I want to be a prisoner of, Ephesians 4, I want to be a prisoner of the Lord. I want to be chained to God. Whenever he moves, that's where I want to go. That nothing could separate me from the love of God. That's the kind of love that I want to have. And so the question is getting past the past. You identified the source, and now you understand what's going on in your life. You know that there has to be a change, but you're going to have to make up your mind that I'm going to get past my past. It's not going to define me anymore. You have to make up your mind. And I believe, how many people believe today could be that day? We saw it in the first service. We saw it in the first service. Today can be that day, but you're first going to have to address the mess. Everybody say, address the mess. Man, whenever I wrote that down, I was like overwhelmed in anxiety because it brought me back my past. And I was there for just a moment, and I wrote it down, and I got out of there. And it wasn't anything that bad, but the house that we lived in before we live in now, it had a one-car garage. And that one-car garage was used for everything but one car. There was no car in there. But there was shoe boxes and boxes and dressers and bags of toys that we're going to donate one day. How many of y'all have those? Like, we're going to get rid of those clothes soon, and they're there forever. I don't know, maybe that's just our house. But it's too important to throw away, but not important enough to keep in the house. And so it goes to the garage. And so I have this stacked up, these piles of all kinds of stuff, but it was nice and neat at first until it started to fall over. And whenever I would go through the garage to throw the trash, I had my little trail, and I would just walk right through. I didn't even want to look at anything because I would know that I would have to address the mess at some point, and I did not want to address the mess. But the crazy thing is, inside the house, living in this another world, is that where are my running shoes at? I don't know. Do you know where the jacket? I don't know. I had an issue with the problem with the light fixture, and the answer was a screwdriver, but I couldn't find any tools. But one day, I don't know. But one day, I decided that I'm gonna address the mess, because you can't correct what you're not willing to confront. And so I lifted up the garage door, and I opened up the back door, and I put some tables out and about 50,000 trash bags. And I made up a rule. If we haven't used it in 6 months, I'm going to throw it away. Sorry, Goodwill, Salvation, you ain't getting none of this. I'm just going to throw it away. I'm going to line up all these trash cans in the alley. Everything's going out. Sorry if that's not right, but that's what happened. But as I was going through all of this in the garage, this mess that I refused to address for so long, it was right there in the middle of the mess, as I was addressing the mess, that I found those shoes. I opened up this bag and I found my jacket. And then I was going through some other stuff and I found this toolbox and I found a screwdriver. And I was like, wait a minute. The light fixture was the problem. And the screwdriver was the answer. But my answer was right in the middle of my problem. And I would tell you this, the reason why so many people don't get their answer is because it's right in the middle of their problem. And they will not address the mess or confront their problems. I would tell you this, if you would start confronting your problems, you would find most of your life answers were right there in the middle of your problem. It was right there in the middle of the mess where I found, it was in my problem, I found my answer. I said it was the same exact thing whenever Goliath, the giant, was taunting the Israelites day in and day out, week after week, slurring out cuss words and all kinds of stuff at the Israelites. A giant, like some giant-sized problems. This is it. Like, the epitome of it, like a giant taunting you. What a mess. And nobody wants to fight this guy. And everybody's just watching in the background, just hoping somebody else. Meanwhile, out in the pasture, you have young David tending to the sheep. And he was isolated where nobody saw. But God was training him up for a day like this. And he would learn to protect those sheep at all cost. And do you know what he became really good at? A slingshot. He's going to bring food to his brothers where the army is. And he walks up, and there's a valley. And he sees this giant cussing and slurring at the Israelites, defiling the name of their God. And he's like, who is this guy? Who is this guy that could say these things against us? And why isn't anybody saying anything? What a mess. Why isn't anybody addressing this mess? Somebody needs to correct this guy, confront this guy. They're like, he's too big. Look at him. He's too big. He's like maybe too big for you. But he has a shield, he has a sword, and he has a spear. You have a shield, you have a sword, and you have a spear. And as long as you try to fight the enemy on his terms, you're going to lose every time. He says, I'm not here to fight the enemy on his terms. I'm here to fight the enemy on God's terms, the way that he already trained me up. And I'll tell you this, the same thing. Don't ever fight the enemy. If he tries to lure you in to a battle, never fight him the way that he wants you to fight. You fight him with your praise. If you can let out a praise, if you can let out some worship, you fight the way that God is the one, the way that God raised you up. And he says, yeah, he's probably too big for y'all. But you're too small. Yeah, I might be small, but I'm not empty. And I didn't come empty-handed. I came filled with the power of God because I'm not going to fight this guy on your terms. I'm going to fight him the way that God showed me. And they say, no, he's too big. He's too big. He's too big of a problem. He's too big. And he goes, no. The reason he's so big is my answer. See, for you, he's too big. And that's a problem. But for me, the bigger he is, the harder it is for me to miss. The bigger he is, the easier it is gonna be for me. My problem, my answer is right in the middle of my problem. I'm gonna fight him on the way that God has trained me. Yeah, for you, if you fight the enemy in his way, he is too big. But the bigger he is, the harder he falls because God trained me up and showed me how to use this slingshot. And not only am I going to kill him, I'm going to cut the enemy's head off with his own sword. That's what happened. And I tell you this, whenever you allow God to use your story, you cut the enemy's head off with his own sword. With the own thing that he used against you, you give God glory. Get up, pick up your mat, and walk. The thing that held him down for so long, he now gives glory to God with. With drugs, with alcohol, it's how we give God glory now. Because we were out there ruining so many people's lives, and for that, 100 times more. That's how many people we're going to bring into the kingdom of God. And what you messed up teaching me how they think. You messed up showing me how they operate. And now I can get into their mind and understand where they are and what they're going through. It doesn't matter where they are in their life. I can relate and I can bring them in to the kingdom of God. So I just count it as experience. Very experienced. Got a PhD in this. So the question is, are you willing to get past the past to be able to go forward? And I said, You have to, in this present time, you have to make a decision that you're going to allow your past to propel your future. You have to allow your past to propel your future. That means that what I used to do and my story and the pain and everything that I used to do, I'm going to allow that to propel me. Instead of hold me down, that's going to be my story. What is the most beautiful thing on a butterfly? And whenever that caterpillar is inside of the cocoon, it goes and it digests itself to a liquid. And whenever this caterpillar begins to regenerate, whenever it becomes to bring itself back together, it begins to form an entire new species, a different creature. And the wings, what the wings are actually made of, is crystallized waste. Think about that. Its waste became its most beautiful thing about it. Its waste became its wings. And I want to tell you this. The hardest, the dirtiest, the messiest parts of your life will become the most beautiful, awesome, and God-glorifying part of your life if you will allow him to do it. I'm going to get ready to close. In order to be filled, you must become empty. In order to be filled, you must become empty. Because I say this, if there is still a little bit of you left, there's still a little bit of you left. And it's not going to work. Because it was a little bit of me that got me in a whole lot of bit of trouble. God wants all of you, not some of you. Matter of fact, we say things like this, God, I want you, God. And we end up wanting what's in God's hands, but we won't give him what's in ours. God, give me this, give me the peace, but we hold on to our problems. He's saying, let it go. Until you can disconnect from your past, you will never have a future. Until you can unlatch, just like a train. I'm going to unlatch here. I'm going to go this way now. You can go wherever you want, but that's not who I am anymore. I'm going this way. In this present time, you make a decision to allow your past to propel your future. It was the waste that gave the butterfly wings to fly. The question is, are you willing to detach and let go? Are you willing to let go? Because we've held on to these things for so long. She had been an outcast for so long, a Samaritan woman of no value for so long, 5 husbands in it. She's just gonna give up on marriage altogether and keep a boyfriend. And if that means that she has to go to get water from a well at the hottest time of the day, then so be it. That's what I'm gonna do. And she's holding on to this well, but she walks right into her Savior. He speaks life into her. And my closing passage, 28 and 29, says, so the woman left her water jar. Let's just stop right there. So the woman left her water jar. She let go of what was in her hands. The identity and everything that she was. I got to get there at noon. I got to get there when everybody else is away. I got to get there because you don't understand. I've been through some things in my life. Jesus is like, yeah, I was with you the whole time. And now she has this water jar. And she has this revelation who Jesus really is. And she's like, you know what? Water's important, but not as important as living water. And I don't need a bucket for that. It says that the woman left her water jar and went away into town and said to the people, come see a man who told me all that I ever did. Can this be the Christ? I want you to realize what this woman does. Why was she there at the well at noon? To be alone and get away from everybody. But you can't correct what you're not willing to confront. You got to address the mess. She's there because she probably has a lot of shame in her life, right? Have you ever been there before? Didn't really want to see anybody? Look, she didn't want to be around the community because the community would gather around the water well. And you don't want to be there around anybody because of who she thought she was. Then she goes to the water well. She has a one-on-one encounter with Jesus. She finds out who Jesus is. And whenever you find out who Jesus is, you find out who you are. Most importantly, you find out who you're not. And you are not what everybody else said that you were. You are not labeled as the woman with 5 husbands. You are labeled as the righteousness of God, the one who Jesus saved. And she now leaves her bucket and she goes to address the mess, to correct and to confront. She goes and runs and tells everybody. She runs to what she had been running from for so long. And she does exactly what Jesus did to her. In order to correct, you have to be willing to confront. And some of us are going to have to address the mess. And she's like, let's just clear this up right now. I'm running right into this town. And everybody that I used to run from and hide from, no longer am I going to do that. I just had a face-to-face encounter with the living God. And it really doesn't matter what anybody says about me any longer. Matter of fact, I'm praying that all y'all would know him. But the question is, are you willing to let go and allow God to bring something else in your life? Because in order to be filled, you have to be empty. How can you be filled with God when you're still full of you? How can you be filled with God and you're filled with guilt? How can you be filled with his spirit when you're filled with shame? It's time to pour out. It's time to pour out all of you, everything. Your opinions, everything that you thought God was, should have been, everything that he didn't do. Why didn't you save my kid? Why didn't you save my parents? You saved that family. What about my family? Just to back to everything, back to this ground zero, back to this basis foundation where I'm going to pour out everything, God, so you can fill in some things. Because until we identify the source and these root issues that you have in your life, you will just be like that bucket with holes all inside of it. You'll come to church on Sunday, empty by Wednesday, empty by Sunday, empty by Wednesday, empty by Sunday. And you can't really patch something up while there's still water in it. It's time to pour it out and allow God to do something in your life today. So this altar call